So first of all, let's see how we can declare arrays of integers. I'm gonna go inside this on create method, and so I'm gonna leave a comment right now and say that I'm gonna declare an array. And in order to declare an array, you just have to first of all use the int keyword or just your data type, and then you can use this pair of square brackets. That's just specifying that is a one-dimensional array. If you have two-dimensional array, so that's just like a matrix, or three-dimensional, those are more complicated. We're not going to be discussing about them. An array is just using this one pair of brackets, and then you have to use the name. So we're going to have the example of a course that has multiple sections, and we want to keep track of the number of students in each section. So in order to do this, we're going to say number of students in sections of Computer Science 101. So that's the name of our course, and as I said, we have multiple sections, different number of students in each section, and that's why we use this array in order to keep track of those numbers. And we can end the declaration with a semicolon. Most of the times you will initialize arrays, because declaring an array is just stating what the name of the array is, and it's just more useful if you just initialize it. And right now I'm just going to use the first way to do this. So I'm going to initialize and add values one by one, and there is also another way to do this, but first of all let's see how we can do it this way. So we're going to say first of all int array, and then I'm going to just use an array to store the scores of a couple of players. So let's say if you have a multiplayer game that has about 10 players, then what you can do is just create an array, and I'm going to show you how to do this. First of all, you need to use this keyword int and then the square brackets, and then let's say player scores. Now it depends, you can use player score or player scores, doesn't really matter. And then you can set it equal to new integer array, and then semicolon. And also what you need to do after you do this, you just have to specify the length of the array. So in our case, if you want to have, let's say we want to have not 10 players, just 5 players, in order to make our example a bit simpler. And if you have 5 players, you just want to specify the length over here. And so that's basically all you need to do. And what you have right now is an array which has 5 slots, and so each slot it's in for keeping track of the score of a player. And keep in mind that at this moment the values that are stored for, let's say, player 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 are all 0, so all have score 0. The default value for an array of integers is 0, so you will just have the value of 0 right now for all the players. And also keep in mind that the first player, the first player will have the index 0. So if you want to change the value right now, basically if you want to add a specific value, or rather to change the default value for player 1, what you will be doing is you're going to say player score of 0, because that's, as you can see right now, that's how you call the slot that's for the first player. So we're going to say player scores of 0 equals 120. So right now, instead of having player scores of 0 set to 0, we just set it equal to 120, and that's how you basically add the values one by one. You just have to specify that this slot is going to have a different value, and so on. Now you can just change them as you would change an array, as you would change a variable. So if you want to change your variables multiple times, you can just do it exactly the same way with this array. And later on, if you want to also make sure that all the other players have something specific like 320, you can do it just as you see right here. And then if you want, you can just go at the end of the line, as I am just now with the cursor, and then you can just Command D if you're on a Mac, or you can press Control D if you're on a PC, and you can just multiply these lines. And so make sure that we have some specific score for all the players, and keep in mind that you need to have you need to access them just by typing in player scores 0, that's the first one, and the last player has an index of 4 in our case. So those are the players that we have. You can't really access something like player scores of 5 or 6 because your application will crash. So then afterwards you can just type in some values that you want for your players, and that's just how it works. And also there is one more way. You can initialize and add values all at once. Now in this case, in the first case that I showed you, the problem is that it's not really much more convenient, because if you would have 5 variables for the player scores, then you would have 5 lines of code. In this case you kind of have that many lines of code. Now if you just want to add all of them at once and you just don't have that many values, you can do it all at once. So just in one line you can just say int array, so you're specifying the brackets, and then player scores, or just let's give it a different name, my player scores, and then you say new, or instead of saying new integer of 5, you can just go and use these curly brackets and then just specify the values, so 120, 320, 355, 90 and 220. And so as you can see right now, you have this value specified. And keep in mind that again, if you want to change the values, if you just want to change them later on, you have to call them by indexes that you see right here. So from 0 for the first player and 4 is just for the last player, and make sure that you don't go over those indexes.